Coming up, we've got reactions to the U.S. operation that took out Nicolás Maduro as the head of the executive branch in Venezuela. We'll get reactions, we'll get analysis, plus the reaction of one state senator who was born in Caracas. This is Metro News Talkline, and we are underway.
Do not attempt to change the station. You are surrounded.
We interrupt this program to bring you an emergency news bulletin. Repeat, this is an emergency bulletin. Keep your radio turned on.
From the studios of WVRC Media and the Metro News Radio and Television Network, the voice of West Virginia, comes the most powerful show in West Virginia. This is Metro News Talkline with Dave Wilson and T.J. Meadows.
Check set line up link. Activated Telos telephone. Switch network control from Charleston to Morgantown.
Stand by. Cue Dave and T.J. You're on. Metro News Talkline is presented by Encova Insurance, encircling you with coverage to protect what you care about most. Visit Encova.com to learn more.
Good morning. Welcome inside the Encova Insurance Studios. It's back to school and back to work for many of you today. Good luck as you head into 26. 304-TALK, 304 is the text line, 800-765-TALK, 800-765-8255. Those are the phone numbers and text lines if you would like to weigh in. We'll have plenty of opportunity for you as the show unfolds today. As I mentioned, we're going to talk a lot about Venezuela, the operation over the weekend to extract Nicolás Maduro and bring him to New York. He will actually face his first court hearing later today. We'll also get into revenue numbers from the month of December and tell you about a big going-ons on the WVU campus ahead of a visit from federal officials as they work to land a big, innovative grant on the WVU campus here in Morgantown. With all that said, Zach Karolchek on the video stream, Sophia Wasik handling the audio, and TJ Meadows is in control of the fort on Virginia Street down in Charleston, known as the Radio Ranch. Good morning, sir. Oh, hang on. First Monday of 26, and I forgot your button. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dave. A lot to get to add to all this you're talking about. You see the news breaking, Tim Walz will not seek a third term as the governor of Minnesota. So add that to the stack as well.
Kind of appropriate that it comes on Black Monday after his failed attempts to woo the bro crowd there. Today's the big day. NFL coaches get fired. Kind of, is it ironic, perhaps, that comes on Black Monday? But
yeah,
nonetheless.
I was asked what I think about it coming in here, not having a lot of time to reflect. My mind first went back to the debate where he said, I'm a bit of a knucklehead at times. I think that kind of sums up where we're at with Tim Walz.
So that happening as well. Lots to get to as we get rolling here on a busy Monday morning. Over the weekend, the U.S. carried out a daring op to extract Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro and his wife, bringing them to New York to face indictments here in the U.S. The operation itself was an overwhelming success, carried out quickly with no American casualties. Now, there are many questions about the op and what happens next. To help us sort through those questions, Robert Bolton, Fairmont State University Assistant Professor of National Security and Intelligence, joins us on Metro News Talkline. Robert, good morning. Good to talk to you again.
Good morning, Dave. Good morning, TJ. Glad to be back on.
Well, Robert, most of the questions that I have seen brought up regarding this op aren't about Maduro or his conduct. Everybody seems to be in pretty much agreement. He's a bad guy. He's a bad actor on the world stage. The questions are about the administration's authority constitutionally and legally to carry out the operation. So with that, what is the constitutional grounds that the administration has cited as far as authority to carry out this op?
Well, typically when the president is going to put the United States Armed Forces into combat, they are supposed to the president is supposed to seek what's known as a declaration of war, or since World War II, we use some legal equivalent such as an authorization for the use of military force. That did not happen in this instance. Now, there is a legal exception to that under the War Powers Act of 1973, where the president can insert military troops abroad for a limited period of time, typically when it's necessary to protect American lives overseas, which has been the primary justification we've seen coming out of Washington over the last day or so, that Maduro's regime was holding American citizens hostage and had also engaged in saber-rattling against neighboring countries that are allied to the United States. And so in order to protect American interests, we were using military force for those reasons.
Robert, is there precedent in that H.W. Bush, what he did with Panama and Noriega? So did the Trump administration use that as precedents to defend what they did over the weekend?
They are heavily leaning on the Panama precedent. You do see commentators discussing issues with Iraq or Kosovo, Libya, Syria, and those all do have some merit. But the single closest parallel is Panama, because in that case you did have a leader of a Latin American country who was holding power by force, who was widely viewed in the international community as politically illegitimate, much like Maduro, who, if there were neutral observers, probably lost the last presidential election 70-30. And in that case, Noriega was also holding American citizens hostage in Panama. There are some distinct differences, though. Panama obviously is a country only about a tenth of the size of Venezuela, and also we did have certain international treaty connections with Panama, especially through the Panama Canal, that maybe would have given us a greater in. But I fully expect that you will see Maduro's lawyers arguing, producing similar legal arguments to what Noriega's attorneys did in the Southern District of Florida almost 30 years ago.
Robert Bolton is joining us, professor at Fairmont State University. Robert, since World War II, I cannot remember an instance of Congress actually declaring war. So how common has it been for the executive branch to use unilateral authority to order military strikes or military operations?
You're absolutely correct, Dave. Last time we declared war was in 1944 against Romania. That's always my fun fact for my students when I teach national security law. We have not officially declared war since then. Now, as a matter of both constitutional law and international law, that does not mean we have not engaged in military conflict, that we have not engaged in wars. A war is basically when two country soldiers are shooting at each other, if you want to use a layman's definition. We've used unilateral instances of force on many occasions. We engaged in airstrikes against Libya during the Reagan administration in the 1980s, and again in 2011 to overthrow Muammar al-Gaddafi. We began engaging in airstrikes and had some boots on the ground in Syria after ISIS swept across Syria and roughly two-thirds of Iraq in 2014. Obviously, we've already discussed the incidents in Panama. I'm trying to think of a few other, probably our excursion into Cambodia in 1970, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, there have been multiple instances that we've entered countries without prior congressional authorization. It's actually pretty common.
Professor, this is muddy, and let me try to define the mud a little bit, and then maybe you can clear it away with your answer. You have U.S. domestic law, which allows the FBI, the DEA, to go after drug kingpins, these kinds of folks. Maduro was indicted. There's nothing specifically in law that says that ends at our borders. However, we have signed and are a member of the United Nations. We signed the UN Charter. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the Constitution says and recognizes that charter as a treaty. Therefore, it's bound law in the United States. So did we violate international law? Are we going to face backlash from the UN, or does domestic law take precedence over everything?
Well, if you read our Constitution under the Supremacy Clause, it specifically says federal law, the U.S. Constitution, and the treaties that we are signatories to are a three-legged stool. They are the supreme law of the land. They override state law and anything else. In regard to whether or not this was a violation of international law, It remains to be seen what was going on the ground. I'd be curious to see what arguments the Trump administration has made. But I will be honest, this is a little bit of a stretch. And the reason why I say that is if this was purely a criminal law enforcement matter, typically what you would do is if you're seeking the extradition of an individual, and Maduro was indicted on 4 counts in the Southern District of New York, you would request from that country that the citizen or individual that's within their borders be extradited to the U.S. Obviously, Caracas was not going to do that with their head of state. However, if you're doing it as a law enforcement matter, it's going to be a relatively limited operation. The Trump administration has subsequently said that we are going to oversee the transition of Venezuela to a new government. That makes it more into a military operation or a military occupation. And as Colin Powell famously said with the Pottery Barn rule, if you break it, you buy it. If you overthrow a government, you have to ensure that the subsequent government is legitimate. Thus far, we are still engaging in political negotiations with the vice president of the Venezuelan government, who is a member of the same group, the same cartel as Nicolás Maduro. Also, when you look at it under international law, there are some legal precedents you can use to potentially justify this, even though under the United Nations Charter, Article 2, subsection 4, it says that a member state should not use military force that could infringe on the territorial integrity or political independence of another state. We have also, if you look also at the UN Charter, Article 52, it says that regional organizations can enact their own solutions for peace and security. Now, in this instance, you have the Organization of American States, which is a treaty organization that the United States and most Latin American countries are members of. And the OAS in 2024 condemned the Venezuelan government and said that it encouraged its member states to take action to ensure the return of democracy in Venezuela. There was a similar argument that was used by the Kennedy administration when it blockaded Cuba in 1962. So I could see an argument made under that. There's also an international law theory known as the responsibility to protect. And I'm very much summarizing what this means, but basically what it says is when a government is capable of intervening in a foreign nation where you have civilians being slaughtered or otherwise subject to persecution, nation states have a duty to respond and interact. The problem with that is there are probably hundreds of different governments in the world today that are engaging in the oppression of their people. And although Venezuela is a very impoverished country and Maduro was undoubtedly a tyrant, if you're going to use that justification to intervene in Venezuela, you probably would have the same justification to intervene in many other countries. And that's where most international law scholars, I think, are concerned right now. No one questions the Venezuelan government is illegitimate and that Maduro was a bad guy. But you could see a government like China using the same justification to try and seize Taiwan, or Vladimir Putin in Russia using that to justify, like Putin did in his speech declaring war on Ukraine, claiming, the Ukrainian government is engaging in genocide of ethnic Russians, which is completely bogus. So if you see those types of justifications being used by U.S. opponents, we need to be very careful when we would try and cite those arguments to justify overthrowing another country's leader.
Robert Bolton, Fairmont State University political science professor, assistant professor of national security and intelligence. Always appreciate the insights, Robert. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, TJ.
Absolutely. We'll get some of your thoughts coming up at 304 Talk 304. Phones are open for you as well at 800-765-TALK, 800-765-8255. Those are the text line and phone numbers you can reach us at. This is Talkline from the Encova Insurance Studio.